Hello?
Magdalene, I'm just going to
mute you quick. Want me to
quick.
just start the Kirk Franklin, the Lift Your Voice right at 1:30? Or do I have to wait for something? Right at 1:30. Okay. Okay, bye.
Welcome everyone this afternoon. What an uplifting rendition of Lift Every Voice. I hope you guys felt just what I was feeling. Very good. I felt it to my core. Lift every voice. Thank you very much for everyone for being here today. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you all for coming. And also, this is going to be the last of our events for Black History Month. We have a series of events celebrating Black History Month. And beyond 2020, the roadmap to reshaping and reinventing our new reality is what we're going to do today, your panel discussion for youth. So at this point, I will ask Jessica to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. So although we are in a virtual space today, our communities of Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, Oshawa, and Clarington are situated on stolen land. We would like to acknowledge that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which Durham Region is located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous, Black Indigenous, and Afro-Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territories of the Anishinaabe Mississauga adjacent to the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nations, the Mississauga people, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we learn, share knowledge, and live. And just to go over some housekeeping for Zoom, if you are unfamiliar with Zoom, so you should have options to raise your hand as an attendee. You don't have options for camera and microphone, so you don't have to worry about that. This will be streamed live to the Pickering Public Library Facebook page. It's also going to be recorded and made available through those Facebook pages that you see on the Zoom presentation right now. So Ajax Pickering, Congress of Black Women of Canada, and Oshawa Whitby chapter as well of the Congress of Black Women of Canada. It will be on those Facebook pages probably within a week or so. So please use the chat feature if you do have any questions throughout the panel discussion. There is a Q&A, so if you do look at the bottom of your screen, you will have a Q&A option. You can ask questions through that Q&A, and we do recommend that you do that you engage with the panel that is happening today. We will then be able to moderate that Q&A, and our moderators will be able to share those questions to the panelists. So make sure you are using that feature, and we will let you know whether they're being answered live by the panelists or if they're being typed or dismissed, as well as questions to government officials that we have today too.
Okay. Again, welcome everyone. My name is Magdalene Lesman. I'm president of the Congress of Black Women, Ajax Pickering chapter. I got so excited, I forgot to introduce myself. Anyway, I would like you to learn a little bit about the Congress of Black Women of Ontario. It's a national nonprofit organization which support and empower Black women and their families. Our mandate is to inspire Black women and ensure that issues that impact their lives, we address issues that impact the lives of Black women, their children, and the families. We have a number of chapters in Ontario. There's the Ajax Pickering chapter, there's Brampton, London, Mississauga, North York, and also Oshawa Whitby and Scarborough. It's very easy to find out about the Congress of Black Women. You just have to Google and Congress of Black Women, either chapter Ajax Pickering, and you can find one of the locations or information about any one of the chapters, and we welcome you, invite you to join one of the chapters. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I now invite, today's theme is Beyond 2020 and Roadmap to Reshaping and Reinventing Our New Reality. Today, I am excited to present to you our youth panelists. In the year 2020, life changed essentially for everyone, but something very significant happened. The world watched in awe as we witnessed the powerful groups of young people worldwide assume leadership roles, unafraid and uncomfortable, and they were unafraid and uncomfortable. They're not afraid to tackle the tough questions. They've got the passion, perseverance, and also they've got an understanding that forced them to confront some of the hard truths that adults normally do not face easily. They challenge the status quo, and as a group, they've earned their rightful place as future leaders. And it is with great pleasure I introduce Angela Todd Anderson, President of the Congress of Black Women, Oshawa Whitby chapter, and introduce her as she introduced our youth panelists And let's hear the voice of today's youth, and let's give them a platform to express themselves. I'm handing it over to you, Angela.
You're muted, Angela.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Yes. Again, I would just like to introduce myself. My name is Angela Todd Anderson, and I'm the president for the Congress for Black Women of Canada, the Oshawa Whitby chapter. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I welcome each one of you, and welcome to all our panelists as we discuss the topic of discussion here today, Beyond 2020, Roadmap to Reshaping and Inventing Our New Reality. I am sure upon listening, we will be better enlightened on the role of our youths as they move forward in the future and the future role that they will play. They're now in a position where they can help us to reshape and invent the new reality. In no particular order, I would like to introduce our 6 fine, outstanding panelists. First, we have Adam Almi. He's an anchor in training. Adam Elmi is a 23-year-old Canadian Somali attending George Brown College and majors in marketing. He works in the social relations department at Generation Chosen as anchor in training. Akuah Frempong. Akuah Frempong was a recipient of the Congress of Black Women Ajax Pickering Chapter Scholarship in 2012. She completed her Bachelor of Science in Nursing and Master's in Global Health Systems in Africa with degrees from Western University. She completed her Global Health Practicum in Uganda, graduating in 2018. Akuah is currently the Acting Secretary for the Oshawa Whitby chapter. Cassandra John-Whittingham, she's a student. Cassandra is a senior at Kingsway College. Cassandra knows what Black excellence is by her determination, resilience, and courageous efforts to educate others at her young age. One of the accolades that supports this statement is she's a recipient of the 2017 Deben Activating Student Success Award. She's extremely humbled and honored to be able to voice her opinion today on this panel. Next, we have Darren Enning. He's an anchor's assistant at Generation Chosen. Darren is a 20-year-old student currently in his 3rd year at York University. His goal is to become a teacher and hopefully teach within the community. He was raised in the Jane and Finch area. Darren has been working at various nonprofit organizations within his community since he was 16. He currently works at Generation Chosen as an anchored assistant, meaning he teaches mental health and emotional intelligence based on the curriculum to the youngest cohort, grades 7 to 8. We also have Kadine Kelly, who's a job placement specialist. Kadine is a graduate from York University with a Bachelor of Social Work with honors. She resides right here and works in Durham region. She focused her practice on the child welfare system and mental health. Kadine currently works in the employment services sector, specifically with youth with multiple barriers to employment, including but not limited to race, gender identity, criminal history, disabilities, and mental health challenges. Kadine believes it is important to give back to her community. One way which she demonstrates that is in her role as a member of the Congress of Black Women, the Oshawa Whitby chapter. We then have Shamar Barnett. He's a community leader and student. Shamar Barnett is a 3rd-year York University student studying law with a minor in French. He's deeply rooted in the Jane and Finch community where he was born and raised. Shamar Barnett works with youth in the community on behalf of Generation Chosen organization. He helps in healing the community by elevating mental stress and by educating our youth on how to better identify with themselves as opposed to social constructs, encouraging emotional intelligence, and to ultimately guide our youth on a path to their true and full potential. We welcome each one of our fine and outstanding panelists. Without further ado, we will now get into the discussion questions, and I'm sure everyone is as excited to hear their views as I am. Our first question, we'll start with Cassie. If you recall, Cassie is currently a student at Kingsway College. Cassie?
Hello.
Hi, so thank you, you've unmuted. The first question goes to you, and it says, in your opinion, what will happen to kids and teens as a result of this pandemic? Consider school closures, less time socializing, decreased extracurriculars, and virtual schooling, and increased screen time. And what changes have you already noticed among your peers?
Thank you so much for that question. So I've realized a multitude of changes in some of my peers. Some have been able to stay consistent with being motivated, and some haven't been able to tackle that ability. I've seen many people isolating themselves, trying to find themselves through social media platforms, constant scrolling and screen time, lack of sleep. I haven't seen that many things towards the good for certain of my peers, but overall, I've been there to support many of them, because for me, I decided that, you know, the pandemic, it gave me an opportunity to test my leadership skills and my adaptability. So I was able to stay steadfast in my character of always being strong and determined. So I was able to offer some youth that are very close to me a support system that they could always come and talk to. If any of my friends needed homework help, they could always FaceTime me, talk to me. We could form a little study group. So definitely with the new Zoom technology and of course FaceTime and stuff like that, it helped create new avenues and new study group habits to form with youth. So yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Before I go any further, I should have noted, if you do have any questions with respect to any one of the panelists that are speaking, if you could just type the questions in the chat and the name of the panelist that it's been directed to, and we will have a portion later on where we will be addressing the questions. One question I would like to ask you, just coming off that, did you, I guess, notice an increased amount of anxiety amongst your peers?
100%, especially since school was still happening virtually online. A lot of people were very agitated about getting assignments done on time. Yet there was so much stress of course, the pandemic. We saw all the riots that were going on in the States and stuff like that. So especially with minority youth, I saw an increase in anxiety and troubles with mental illness. So it was very sad to witness that happen to some of the people that are closest to me. So there was definitely an increase in mental health issues.
Okay, so going through the pandemic, as you've noticed, I guess support, you would say, was one of the big things that would have helped the students. Did the school in any way also provide, because I know it's virtual, a safe space for these students?
Well, I was very privileged because the school that I go to, Kingsway College, it's a boarding school and it's also a Christian school. So we were always offered support, and I feel like it was also great preparation for university because, you know, you're not going to have such a great community of people always around you, on you, like you have to do this, that, and the other. So really, it made me tie up my boots and get on my emailing game to my teachers if I ever had any issues to deal with and sort out. So my school was there to support me, but I know that some of my friends in the public system were not that privileged and were always very scrambled and shambles. And of course, they have the new quadmesters that they're going through where work is very rushed and they don't have time to go through their courses at the same speed as usual. So yes.
Thank you. My next question for you. So research indicate that the risk of death from COVID-19 is highest among Blacks. How did the image of George Floyd combined with the dire prediction on the impact of COVID on the community affect you personally in the summer of 2020?
It strongly affected me. It made me very sad to see this image of this man that represented so many other disadvantaged Black people within America, and of course BIPOC people in general, being victims of police brutality and of course discriminated against. So for me, it really helped shape my view of the world, in that although I may be in these little communities like Ajax and Oshawa and Pickering and stuff like that, where it's very diverse and I haven't encountered that many experiences with racism, that it's still alive and that it still happens in this world. And I can't just be sheltered and think, oh, I'll be fine going through life like it's nothing. I need to prepare myself and be ready for, if I were to ever encounter a situation of racism, how I would deal with it. And you know, it really made me reflect, am I a proactive person or am I a reactive person? And what am I ever going to do if an adversity or an obstacle like that would stand in my way in the future?
Okay, just one more question on that. So 9 months later, what are your thoughts on the George Floyd incident? I know it's probably still raw in our minds, but 9 months later, how do you see it?
I'm still extremely saddened by it, but I've learned to, you know, kind of cope with, sadly, that this is the reality that many encounter and many live in fear of every single day of their lives. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's definitely given me an opportunity to educate myself on things like police brutality, more things that have to do with Black History Month, because I saw that in the summertime, social media platforms like TikTok and stuff like that, I saw way more BIPOC people popping up and stating a lot of statistics and facts of sad things that are happening within the Black community that are usually kept silent or behind closed doors, because some people just don't want to research it, or they don't see it because it's not popping up on their timelines or on the news. So it really made me wake up. And of course, I'm still consistent with signing change.org, like surveys and stuff like that. And of course, communicating with people that are non-POCs, that don't understand the kind of struggle that we go through every single day, and having a nice open flow with those that are, because community is very important, and so does representation.
Thank you, Cassandra. I am going to move on to Darren Enning, and I'm going to try to, mix it up a bit so that we can get a different feeling from each one of the panelists. So thank you so much. And then if Darren could unmute. Hi, Darren.
Hi, you guys can hear me?
Hi. Yes, okay, I can hear you. Okay. So Darren, my first question to you. Darren, as an anchor assistant, you teach grade 7 to 8 mental health and emotional intelligence, sorry. In light of the global anti-racism outcry last summer, how were those programs that Generation Chosen adapted to manage with the negative impact that it had on youth?
Yeah, so at first I'd just like to say that at Generation Chosen, we have a very familial vibe where we base our relationship with the students is number one. And so in terms of when it comes with programming, or when kids are dealing with things that might affect them negatively, like such as the anti-racism movement, I guess that might affect their attitudes. They personally come to us with that kind of stuff, and we try to help them. We guide them through those issues. There's been times where like mentees, or Ankies is what we call them, our students, they've come to us and told us how they're feeling, and we try to help them out as much as we can. But we've also implemented therapy within our nonprofit, and so there's an option for free therapy by licensed Black therapists, just so that the therapists actually share something in common with the youth that we serve. And so that was a decision that our organization made to help our youth deal with external factors and help them guide and learn how to cope and progress through things like the anti-racism movement or the pandemic and so on and so forth.
Thank you. You mentioned that there was free therapy, so that's available to everyone, no matter what region you live in?
Yeah. So it's free. Like so basically our program, there's about, I think, 5 or 6 therapists, Black therapists, and the organization pays for it, but it's free to the youth. I actually currently use it myself. So what happens is you get 5 free sessions, and then if you need anything beyond that, our organization is definitely open to expanding based on your needs. But yeah, well, the therapy is available to any and everybody.
Okay, thank you. Statistics also reveal that young people's happiness plummeted due to stress. What strategies were employed to keep youths motivated in spite of the media images, etc.? And what was their response?
Yeah, so throughout our programming, we do sprinkle a lot of activities. And these activities, they just allow for the kids to pay attention and be more responsive. The feedback from the activities has been positive, as it helps make the online class feel more personable. And so I've gotten personal testimony from youth that they tell us that our activities and our lessons, they make them very happy. What we've also done is we've incentivized our youth to kind of encourage them to participate. And so based on their weekly participation, they might get something such as a gift card for maybe $150 or something like that. We do try to give out very nice gifts, generous things, so that the kids will definitely pay attention and be happy. Anything to put a smile on kids' faces during a time like this, or any time for that matter, is a smile for them to smile for me. So
Great. I'm just going to switch a little bit, just as we've been talking a bit about stress and mental health. So I'm going to switch to kind of going to the workforce. And I think the first individual that I'd like to call upon is Kadine Kelly. Thank you, Shamar. And if Kadine could unmute. Hello, Kadine.
Hi, Angela.
Hi, thank you for joining us today. So my first question for you here is, in what ways have BIPOC, the Black, Indigenous, and people of color, experienced further marginalization or hardship during this pandemic?
Yeah, I think in the BIPOC community, we really stress the importance of that familial connection, like being around our community and being around people with like-minded values. And during this pandemic, with everything shut down and having those restrictions where you can't go around your family, or you can't go to these events that are hosted like weekly or several times a week or monthly or whatever, having that lack of connection to your community has definitely caused a lot of depression in the BIPOC community that I've noticed. Just not having that attachment to people that like you're familiar with and being isolated, being alone. So I think that's one of the main issues that I've noticed within that community.
Okay, so have you started to realize, like, there are any patterns or shifts within your work as a job placement specialist?
Like patterns as in?
Patterns, I mean, because things are a bit now out of the norm. So yeah. Are there any kind of, consistency with the people that you assessed? What have been the shifts that they have, and what have you as a job placement specialist, what has the company put in place to accommodate those shifts? And, are those shifts kind of temporary, or is it something that, going forward, how will you navigate that then?
Mm-hmm. So a large shift that I've primarily noticed is putting our services online has created a huge barrier to access to social services, especially when we assume that these people who are unemployed and accessing our services have the means to have a computer, have the means to have a cell phone and a paid bill that they can even communicate with us with. So we've been trying to kind of shift things around to see how we can make it more accessible to them. One of the things that we have been doing is trying to shift things onto Zoom, because unfortunately, we've been primarily relying on cell phone connection, and we've been noticing people can't pay their cell phone bills. Shifting it to Zoom to make it more of a round table type setting so that you can see people's faces, you can have that connection, and it's not just like isolated. So we've put our online programs into like a classroom-based setting. But then another shift that we've noticed is a lack of motivation and a lot of depression, again, due to being isolated and due to going through 2 lockdowns and possibly a third one. It's been making people a little bit less motivated to, want to go out into the workforce, because we are going through these lockdowns and they're losing jobs repeatedly, and the lack of motivation because they don't have the finances. So I think that's been like a huge shift that we've noticed, and being able to support those needs has been very challenging. We do like to ask our clients how they feel that we can support them, so that it's not just on our end, we're trying to figure out how can we make it more accessible or what they need. We just like to ask them specifically. So every week, what I'll do with my clients is that I'll call them, I'll see like how they're doing, how's their job search going, but then I also like to check and see how's like your mental health going? How can we make our services more accessible to you? How can we support you during this time that there's not jobs that are accessible, or if they don't qualify for EI or something, like how can we support you? So we've also noticed that we have gotten more support from like the government in terms of our funding and how we're able to provide our clients with funding. So that's been primarily what we've been doing.
Okay. I like that you touched on the topic of government, which will actually bring me to the next question for you, is that I know for clients who have not been able to work during the pandemic, we know, of course, there was the CERB platform that came out. So can you just elaborate a little bit on that, just to say, how did the CERB help them? And, what happened after the CERB was ended? What kind of hardships do they face? Because we know right now it's not there. So, what are the hardships, you see going forward?
Mm-hmm. So because I do work with youth with barriers, as you mentioned, like the different examples, a lot of my clients didn't qualify for CERB, unfortunately, especially because it was based on their 2019 income tax, not income tax, sorry, their income. So a lot of my clients weren't even eligible for it. And the ones who were, it was not enough to support what they needed. So like they're paying their rent, paying their phone bill, paying their internet bill, like all those stuff. It was helpful. I won't say that it wasn't helpful at all. It was helpful for a short period of time. But then when you still have jobs that can't afford to bring their employees back, when you still have people who don't even qualify for most jobs because maybe they were given a job that wasn't able to reopen because they just lost all their funding. They had to go in for bankruptcy. Or so it's a challenging question to answer, just because I didn't really have the clients who were able to utilize it. But a small group of them were able to benefit from it, but it was a short period again.
Right. And as we stated before, you work in the community where, if they're Black, Indigenous, and, people of color that are there. So do you foresee that these people, because of COVID and the lack thereof that has come because of COVID, you see like you guys will be doing reteaching, I don't know, because different ways now for them to get back in the community. Do you see a lot of reteaching, I guess unlearn what they knew before and to teach them new?
Yeah, so the great thing about the program that I work in, so I work with the Youth Job Connection program, so I primarily support youth between the ages of 15 to 29. The great thing with our program is that we actually put them through pre-employment training before we support them with their job search. So we will give them that basic understanding, like how to work in a group and like a team setting in a workplace, how to write a resume, how to act in interviews, how to dress and everything. So we do give them that basic training. And I do also job carve because my clients do have like certain challenges. So I think that's also been a benefit that I can kind of like job carve and like to benefit their skills that they do have, but it does take a little bit of unlearning.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kadine, and thank you for answering those questions. I will be moving on to Shamar. So if Shamar could please unmute. Hi, Shamar.
Hello.
Hi. So you work with youth in your community. So your work with youth in the community helps them elevate mental stress, and you also educate on how to better identify with themselves, as opposed to having social constructs. And also to combat this mental health issues that they've been going through, people utilize various forms such as media and radio, television, and various institutions such as churches and organizations. In your opinion, what forms of media, institutions, social supports, and personal relationships have had the most impact on helping youth?
Well, thank you for your question, first and foremost. In my experience, and especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, I realized that increasingly art therapy is something that is an outlet that people refer to as catharsis. And I want to say that in aside to traditional therapy, I'm sorry, because traditional therapy, I just want to put that in there that I am a firm believer that traditional therapy is a form of like entertainment and like just a sense of connection. But aside from that, art therapy, so like whether that's music or paintings, this is an outlet that allows us to express things that words just simply cannot. And another mechanism that I think that we as minorities can use in order to connect is just this sense of community, even the one that we're establishing here, because I feel like race and class create unique mental health barriers for kids like us. And having a group of people that you can relate to and confide in, most importantly, I feel like that really goes a long way.
Okay, and do you think with the different support that, I guess that you provide out there, do you think that it helps to create a strong sense of self, because during this time, as I say, the COVID just makes it kind of impossible for people to connect, people lose who they are, they get depressed. But do you think with you helping the youth, it helps to create a worth of self for them?
Yeah, and I'm happy you asked me that, because I really wanted to mention this, that my work at Generation Chosen really surrounds helping these same underserved kids or sideline youth that they're referred to navigate these mental illnesses. And we do this by helping them navigate challenging systems. And this is done, and when I say this, I mean like just helping them navigate challenging systems that they're confronted by in their everyday lives. We do this in hopes of just interrupting cycles of trauma that are so often experienced in these underserved communities most prevalently. And I think that the same trauma is responsible for the self-sabotage or the feeling of imposter syndrome that our youth feel. So like, for example, them feeling that they don't deserve opportunities that are made available to them, and maybe even sitting at or tables like this or sharing spaces like this. So just by us interrupting those harmful stories that invade our daily lives, I feel like that's an important way that we provide our Enkies with a good self-identity before society has the chance to impede and corrupt their perception of themselves.
Okay. Does Generation Chosen, do they also partner with other organizations that they can bring into to help these youths and could you just elaborate on that a little bit? Like what would their partnership structure, be like in order to help?
Well, I feel like Darren kind of hit this on the nail a bit earlier, but for example, we offer therapy in the community. So what that looks like is just first of all, it starts as soon as you enter the Generation Chosen atmosphere. You're just bombarded with a sense of community, love, sense of self, sense of identity. Like we operate on the basis of 4 pillars: emotional intelligence, financial literacy, mental health, and civic engagement. So just when you're provided with these tools and building blocks that you need in order to thrive in society, you're almost stripped of your imposter syndrome. But as far as partnerships go, we are very close with Operation Black Vote Canada, which I am a part of. Again, like 1834 fellowship, that is basically 40 high potential Black youth who are exposed to political opportunities. And to speak to that a little bit, I had the opportunity to be mentored by Steve Anderson, who's actually the mayor of Shelburne. So aside from that, what I was saying to a bit earlier, Darren kind of hit on this. I feel like our most profound partnership might be the one with therapy. Like we're able to provide these children free therapy. And like Darren said, I also take advantage of that. And if their mental proclivities get to the point where it's a harm to themselves or society, we also have a partnership with CAMH. So we're able to provide these children with like medical help as well if it gets to that. So I feel like we have a pretty sturdy foundation in order to prevent our children from falling through the cracks of systemic discrimination and racism.
Thank you, Shamar.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, we will be moving just a little bit ahead to Akuah Frempong. So Akuah, if you could please unmute. Hi, Akuah.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. In your work as a global health professional, you advocate for the health and equity of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. In light of the pandemic, what additional support have you received from your employer to better service your client base and to ease your own mental and physical health concerns?
Thank you very much for the question. So when I was initially looking at the question, it was quite interesting because in my role, I'm actually a case manager. So I actually help manage all of those intersection and all of those factors for pretty much individuals across all races as we essentially deal with individuals who live all over the globe. So I think in terms of my own personal identities, in terms of being able to have an outlet, whether it's at work or when it's not at work, that's a little bit difficult to answer in terms of what my employer has done for me. So prior to the pandemic, I was already in a position of privilege where through my private insurance through work, I have coverage for, all the various things that while we do have a single payer tax funded healthcare system is not comprehensive. So for instance, if I needed additional therapies that we Generation Chosen had spoken so greatly about before, or, addition of medications, physical therapies, arts therapies, speech therapies, those things are not provided comprehensively. And so like the clients I service, they have to pay for those additional therapies. And like I myself would have to pay for those additionally. So I actually haven't received any additional funds to help with that. I think it's just in addition to what I've already been paying for through private insurance, as well as the ones that my members have. But I think it's just important for me as a case manager to just ensure that I seek out all the possibilities that are available for them, primarily in terms of ways that people can actually afford them. Because in a lot of the countries of the individuals that I help deal with, they live in countries where healthcare is not publicly funded. So we are now at the largest intersection of social determinants, which is income disparity, in terms of allowing people their essential right to be able to access healthcare, not only just access it, but in a timely manner and in a way that is specific to their particular age, sex, sexual orientation, race. And so this tends to be very challenging, especially in an unprecedented situation like this. We're in a global pandemic where nobody knows what to do and nobody knows where we're supposed to go in terms of taking the intersectional pillars that we've already had prior, and that, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, because we often like to group them together, essentially in terms of acknowledging how we actually put forth comprehensive healthcare for everyone who is essentially non-white. So this tends to be very challenging when we're in a time where everyone's just like, well, you know, put on a mask, stay safe. But what does that mean for people who have extra comorbidities and extra income disparity who can't do those in the traditional ways that I think society expects of us?
Okay. Good answer. The next question: to address the underrepresentation of women in some sectors, Deputy Prime Minister Christina Freeland said that the government wants to build a province where every woman and girl has the tools to advance in any position of their choice. What advice would you offer the minister and how to achieve that outcome within the Black community?
Very interesting. So with International Women's Day coming up on March 8th, this will definitely be a topic of discussion as we look forward in terms of really making sure that women and girls, particularly Black women and girls, feel that they're supported in anything that they can do. And frankly, maybe controversial, I don't think that the current government that we have has been the best in terms of representing that, in terms of putting that forward, in terms of really making Black women and girls feel like they're supported. My first, I guess, piece of advice for Minister Freeland would be to sit down with Black women and girls. What is it that they need? What are the barriers that they feel that currently exist, and what can the government actually do to help put them in place? And, you know, we in the Congress have been having a lot of conversations with our elected officials in terms of what needs to happen going forward in terms of supporting the Black community. And I mean, just a few weeks ago, our own region was subject of controversy. So I just think that there's a lot to be said and done. And I think I speak for myself in terms of being a young Black woman, in terms of that I'm tired of the conversations. I think in terms of Black women and girls, I think you should definitely have those conversations. But if you're not about to put intersectional policy and procedure in place to actually change the very course that of the education system that these women and girls are currently going through, then there's no point. Like, throwing money at the situation is not a problem, which we've been seeing from time and time and time again. And I think Black people, and I really hope I can speak on behalf of the wonderful panelists, I think we're all very tired of conversations. Like, we need action. We needed it yesterday. We needed it 60 years ago during the Civil Rights Movement. We needed it not just last year when everything was happening with George Floyd. We needed it years ago when it was happening with Rodney King. We needed it centuries prior when we were going through slavery. And we needed it just a couple decades ago when we were going through Jim Crow. I think that just a lot of things have been happening lately where we're doing a lot of performative action to make it seem like we're doing things, but nothing is really changing. And that's what's frustrating. Like, I personally am very tired of having these conversations. The solutions are there. You have the money. Every couple of minutes, it's almost like, oh, there's another million throwing out that's going to go to XYZ. Okay, but where was that prior when we were talking about how, you know, the stolen land that we're on, Indigenous peoples up north still don't have clean water? Where was that conversation prior when we were talking about, you know, the violence that was happening in the Black community and how we needed therapies such as art therapies and just simple having Black therapists just sit down with our youth and see what was happening with them? And crickets. All of a sudden, a seemingly shocking incident happens. And why I say seemingly shocking is because it had happened so many times prior and we had so many hashtags prior. To me personally, what happened to George Floyd was not shocking. It was shocking that it was caught in such a manner. It was shocking that we saw it in such a way where we saw white supremacy act in such a way that they were so bold in doing what they were doing that they didn't think that there were any consequences. And that is the problem. That is the problem. I think Will Smith or somebody said, racism is not just happening, it's being filmed. We're now in a position to talk more about it because we're seeing it. Whereas when Black people were seeing it prior, it was like, oh, well, you know, one more thing that they're complaining about. Whereas we're in a position now where that the actions are here. They're in a way where we can see them and we're still not having any consequences of those actions. So I think that there's a little bit of that in terms of like, not really a good, but beating the dead horse where we're kind of just like talking around in circles and circles and circles and nothing's really happening. So, I mean, if Krista Freeland wants to have a conversation, I'm sure a lot of people would like love to have that. But if the conversation isn't going to go anywhere, I don't see the point.
Okay. And just a comment on that too. And I think, you know, with everything on the rise and, you know, having seen the George Floyd situation, and I think it came at a time when COVID, the pandemic was there, and all we had to do was watching TV, right? So we were able, I think that's why it was magnified in such a way, right? So with COVID, you know, what's your thoughts here with COVID being there? And that's really what's magnifying all these things that were already there. And of course, we are living in a time where our youth seems to be just more bold. And, you know, they're about, as you say, getting things done because you've grown up hearing the conversations. And now with COVID and all these things have been magnified. So do you think with COVID being around and all these things have been magnified, and I know there's a talk, you know, they're talks, and they're giving out things just to move things along, but we still don't believe that things are actually happening. But do you think with COVID now and things are just out there in the beginning, do you think that now is the time there will be, what do you think, that there'll be a change? There will actually be that next move, only because you're dealing with a different set of young individuals who are just so bold and want to see things done and being more active in the community, and they're not getting off these politicians.
I think yes. And I think like I'm so proud to be part of, I guess, the millennial generation where we're just like not taking no for an answer and very much want to see things done. I think that's the power of the youth, and why I was like very fortunate to be part of this panel and kind of speak to that. Social media has catapulted us into a generation and a time that, you know, we've never thought of previously. And like this is like literally the most powerful tool like anyone has ever had, which is phenomenal. Like we can do everything on just a tap and a touch. And so I think that, you know, us being able to go to our politicians is one thing. But I think what the youth, especially after the George Floyd incident did, is that they rallied and they organized, and they're doing that using social media, and they're doing that without government support. And they're doing that without necessarily having to, you know, be guided by anyone. And I think that there's so much power in that. There's so much power in being able to organize and be autonomous and be at the forefront of really being the change that you wish to see. And so I think it's getting to the point now where politicians have no choice but to listen, because we're at your front door. We're marching, we're protesting, we're signing petitions, we're doing all that we can to just try and get an inch of just some sort of acknowledgement and understanding about what's happening. And so, you know, I think COVID is kind of like the precedent right now. I think kind of race relations is like very like close, like if we're doing it in terms of a level. And so I think like as we go forward, COVID will obviously seem to be at the forefront. Like we obviously all want to get out of this pandemic as safely and as securely as possible. But I think especially when we are talking about the Black community, there are a lot of intersections there. I mean, we are seeing that Black and Indigenous people specifically are most likely to die from getting this because of all the other comorbidities that we have. And, you know, we're also talking a lot about the homeless community as well, and how they're largely disproportioned. And again, the racial impact of people who make up people who are homeless. And so I think, again, when we're looking at all of our intersections and all of our social determinants in terms of race, class, education level, and this, I guess in terms of if we really go back historically, the lack of trust with some of the Black community and the government, and, you know, specifically not being listened to when it came to our health concerns. So I know a lot of people are having hesitations about getting the vaccine. And so, you know, I don't blame them. I mean, when you've lived in such a time where, you know, the government that you've known or grown up with, or, you know, for us, how it changes every couple of years, is it really changing? And so I don't blame people for not really wanting to be a part of that. And I think it comes back down to really building that trust again. Like we're never going to progress and we're never going to move forward if we don't see it.
Thank you, Akuah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's the perfect ending to Akuah's question, but it will lead me right into Adam. If Adam, could you unmute yourself, Adam? And Adam? Is Adam on the line? Maybe he's muted. Okay. while we're trying to locate Adam on the line, because I don't hear him, I just wanted to go back to, I wanted to go back to Kadine for a moment. Kadine?
Hi.
Hi, Kadine. I wanted to ask you, so just listening to Akuah, I just wanted to piggyback. What are your thoughts on how the government has handled the pandemic with you, working as a job specialist?
Yeah, I think Akuah definitely raised some really valid and like amazing points. Very well said. I do think we could do better in terms of the financial supports that we're able to offer people, especially with the lack of job security during this pandemic, and it doesn't look like it's going to improve anytime soon. I think making CERB or financial supports more accessible would be like a good first step. And then again, also having those conversations with the people who are directly impacted by it, having those conversations with the people who are working frontline with people who are directly affected by the pandemic. I think that would be a great first step, and taking their considerations and making different policies to support the communities that we're trying to support.
Thank you, Kadine. I am going to go back right now to Shamar, because I had a question for Adam, but as Shamar and Adam is from the same organization, I'm hoping Shamar, if Shamar is still on the line, Shamar?
Yeah, I am. Hello.
Hi. So I have a question here for you. So to make headway, it is very important that young people become involved in the political process. Right? The assumption is that at Generation Chosen, that young people should become more involved in the political process in order to effect change.
Yeah.
How is that belief being promoted at Generation Chosen?
Well, as I said earlier, when I was talking about how we help children better identify with themselves, one of our 4 main pillars is civic engagement. So taking a step further, civic engagement really went well respective to our community when we try to deliver it is not only making decisions, but making informed decisions when you're voting for the people who essentially have the fate of your life in their hands. So yeah, we really think that it's very important that young people are engaged in the political process, and that they just ultimately are like aware, because so to speak to what we do, we do have a very tight connection with the Green Party, where they actually have they facilitate sessions on civic engagement and educate our young people on how they can begin to get involved. We also have a program called Green Anchors that deals with environment. So again, that's like the Green Party. Again, they have 2 connections to our program. We have an environment-based program called Green Anchors, where they basically take on environment initiatives and just try to lower their footprint. So to speak to that, yeah, we have 2 programs that deal with civic engagement.
Okay, perfect. So many youths found themselves at home with parents during this pandemic. Based on feedback from youths, what do you wish their parents knew and how could they help them overcome the challenges that they face?
Above all, I wish that parents, and sometimes I even wish this for my family dynamic, just know that the amount of pressure that young people are under. So this is something I want to speak to. Like I say this all the time. I feel like my parents did a very great job, because I'm a first generation child. So I feel like my parents did a phenomenal job in like getting us here. Like just the fact that they got us to the land of the free is like, now you can pass the baton to me, like you've done your job. But with that being said, I feel like that comes with an immense amount of pressure, because for them to transition to this land came with a whole host of ramifications and obstacles. So they might just like view what we're going through as like it doesn't compare. So like, oh, I did this, so this should be nothing to you. But like, it's a different dynamic, but you still face like many various obstacles in your everyday life. And I feel like with COVID-19, it really just exacerbated the issues that we face on an everyday basis. So I feel like if we could tell our parents one thing, I think that would be it. Just like maybe like I wish that we could see eye to eye more and have more understanding.
Okay, thank you, Shamar. I have a couple questions that I'd like to put it out there for anyone. So I'm not sure when I read the question, maybe if someone could, maybe I'll ask Keisha, who's on the line, or even Jessica, who has raised their hands, and just so that we can moderate effectively as we go. So I have a question, and this goes to any one of the panelists who would like to answer. Are there efforts by your organization or within your family or by you personally to, and I'm moving into a different realm, to support Black businesses? Is there networking within our community that promote these businesses? And so this is open to the panelists. Anyone who would like to comment on that?
Yeah, I could jump in if nobody else wants to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So at Generation Chosen, I feel like we have a whole host of toolkits that we provide with children in order to stimulate an entrepreneur career in entrepreneurship. Sorry. So first and foremost, I was actually looking at this today because we recently got our syllabus for the year that we're going to be teaching our children. Our pitch day is coming up. So what that entails is like all of our children get together, group up with their friends, new people that they meet, and they have an opportunity to basically do a mock Shark Tank where they pitch us a business, and we also invite private business investors, and then they would give them like $300 to $500 to start their career in entrepreneurship, like based on the most in-depth and most realistic idea that is presented to them. So we literally fund businesses at Generation Chosen. Another avenue we take in our financial literacy and life skills program is that somebody who's actually very close to me, like funny enough, we went to the same school and he was in my generation program. Like I like that dynamic. Like we're all youth, right? Like we're close enough in age to go to the same school, but yeah, I'm his teacher. He had the opportunity to win $1,000 to go towards stocks. And now he's going to be returning to Generation Chosen this year to talk about his experience and just educate our youth. And like that seminar is called A Quest to Trading, because Quest Trade is the platform he used to trade on. So yeah, like he was able to begin his stock investing career. And yeah, like there's a whole host of other things that we do. Like we have maybe 120 speakers come by on a semesterly basis. And yeah, like a lot of them are in the business world. So we open these youth up to outlets and networking opportunities to take advantage of creating businesses. And lastly, we just provide them with a atmosphere of support, which is very much needed and often overlooked. Like we support them, we support their ideas, and we give them that initial push and encouragement that it takes to really take the leap of faith.
Thank you. I'm not sure if there is someone else. Do we have anyone else that's raised their hands to answer that question? If not, I have another question that will go out to all again. And what was the impact on your work life of the pandemic? Did you have reduced work hours, suffer job loss? In case of job loss, were there systems in place to support you? And were there available referral systems readily available to support this individual needed care? And I know Akuah spoke on some of that, but if any one of the panelists has any comment on that, just.
Yeah, I do. I can comment on that. I know I was just having this conversation with my mom because we both work from home now, and we were both talking about how it's not like we're working from home. It's like we're living at home now because the workload is way higher. And working from home is it's just a lot more stressful because it's not like you're having the change of scenery. Like you can go for a walk, but you're coming back and your workload is still there. So in terms of like access to services to support, I didn't really get that through my job besides having the benefits of support therapy. But I did find that I had to go and seek that on my own. Like if I wanted support with how to manage my stress or coping mechanisms, or like how to kind of have that separation from my workstation and then just everything else in my house. yeah, it's been a huge change working from home because you don't have that face-to-face contact anymore. I can't see my clients, just over the phone. Like, it's a different form of connection. So I think it was a really hard change and it is extremely stressful, but I am taking those steps like on my own to combat that.
Thank you. This, it's just piggybacking off that also, you know, and I know this will also affect the students that's online. To what extent did you rely on family support and other support system to help deal with economic shortfall? Because I know even for ones that are working, some people suffered a cutback on their pay, you know, that if that somehow flows into helping their child in school with, you know, for funding wise. So just again, to what extent did you rely on family support and other support system to help deal with economic shortfall?
I can comment on that. So for me at my school, since I'm home, I'm going to try and formulate a schedule. I'm going to dress up. So then, you know, I feel like I'm still in the school environment and, you know, make sure to keep my grades up and stuff like that. So at the end of the year, I was blessed to get like 2 scholarships to go towards my tuition. And that really helped my family a lot in terms of the financial support that goes towards my tuition. And furthermore, for me, I'm an independent person, so I didn't really rely that much on my family members when it came to the actual schoolwork itself. More so, it was relying on teachers, communicating with them, and also my other friends within the classroom. And that helped me a lot. So, thank you.
Great. I just have a quick question, only because I've had a few people even ask those questions, you know, with the COVID, were there more funding that was available for students or scholarship funding per se, seeing that, you know, COVID has put a strain now on financial for parents? Are you aware of any kind of extra scholarships that were in place or funding that was available?
Well, I, of course, have a different experience because at my school, every year we have an award ceremony where you have the opportunity, you know, if you worked hard enough and if teachers observe and other students observe that you're a really hard worker, then you're able to get that opportunity to win scholarships or a scholarship by the end of the semester. So for me, like that really helped me. And additionally, I know that the government had the $200 for students that were online during the early months of this year. So that, I guess, that counts as additional support that was given. But for some parents, that's still not enough money. So yeah, we still need more funding there, especially for younger children that need more things.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I still have a couple questions to ask before we move into our next section. So this question, consider the Ford government's COVID-19 strategy, specifically in terms of stay-at-home orders, business closures, and vaccine rollout. What do you think is working? What is not working? And how could the provincial government better support Ontarians? And this question is open to anyone on the panelists.
Hi, I'd like to chime in.
Thanks, Akuah. Thank you.
I just feel like I've been a general critic of how like our government has been handling this pandemic, but anywho. So I think that, so first, the issue was, and I will state that this was, I believe, a federal as well as a provincial error on their part, in terms of not being specific as, actually first, I will say that it was an error on both their parts to be mindful of the border closures earlier than they were. I think we waited a little too long in terms of like the increasing the flights that were coming in, and especially now it's still kind of unclear in terms of like how the testing at the airport and stuff is working, because we're still seeing variants show up. And as in terms of how science works for me, a variant can't show up in a country that it initially originated from if the person who went to that country didn't get it and come back. So I think that there's been a lot of inconsistencies in terms of like the stay at home, when we've also just calling it out to see that our elected officials have also not been doing the same, which is extremely hypocritical on more than one level. So I think it really very much like puts distrust in terms of like the society's views on what has been working well in terms of and what's not been working well. If the people who are telling us to do the very same thing are not doing what they're telling us to do. So that's been a little awful. And frankly, I think we need more sick days. Like staying at home is a privilege. Like it's you don't necessarily have the right to stay home. They can say that, you know, she should stay home as much as possible, but some people do not literally have the ability to do so. We have a lot of frontline workers who, due to their job, cannot stay home. So in the event that, you know, they have a mild symptom, that could be the difference between them being able to pay rent right now or being able to, you know, put food on the table. So I don't understand in terms of like the government's provisions in terms of being able to affect the people who COVID is really impacting the most, which are people who are on the front lines, our elderly population, which in my opinion going to get into the whole issue with long-term care. And, you know, just in terms of that, if we're like not even, if the government isn't necessarily doing things to protect the same people that, again, are impacted the most. So I just feel like, again, we can say like, somewhat like, again, this is completely unprecedented. Essentially, nobody knows what they're doing. Like we've never had this in a way before that, you know, has warranted any guideline in terms of what should be done, what shouldn't be done. But I also think that we need to be mindful of like, we do need to support the people who are trying to, you know, put science first and really do and are trying to keep us safe. And I think Dr. Tam got a lot, who context, is the medical officer of Health for Canada. I think that, you know, in terms of her messaging, like I support the science that she was putting forward. I think she was getting a lot of xenophobic and misogynistic epithets towards her when this started and people really weren't understanding what was happening. And I think that was really an error on the government's end in terms of not defending her as soon as she should have. I think we've seen a lot of issues where a lot of medical officers of our local public health units have also been, you know, subject to criticism and a lot of, you know, racism and brutality because people just kind of want to get outside and again, like aren't really understanding. So I think above anything, if the government wants to do what they really can to keep people safe, you need to stick to common messaging, trust the science, and put provisions forward to like literally help people survive these next few months, because this was a whole shamble and like a lot of things could have been done better. And I think when we get to, if fingers crossed, whenever we get to the end of this, there will be a very, 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 very lengthy process in terms of going through what went well, what didn't, and evaluating for, you know, when this happens, if and so this happens again. So we just have a lot of work to do. And I think it takes everyone doing their part as best as they can.
Thanks, Akuah. Is there anyone else on the panelists to comment? If not, I have time for one more question before we move into our next section. So the one question, many Canadians have protested wearing masks and various lockdown measures throughout the pandemic. In what ways has the government infringed on our human rights? In your opinion, are these human rights infringements a necessary wrong thing? Was it necessarily wrong, or some people may say, was it a necessary evil? Any comment on that?
I have a comment, but just because I've spoken first last time, if anyone else would like to go first, please feel free.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. I just don't want to make it seem like I'm ranting. Okay, so in regards to the protests, so I first started hearing about them over the summer. I don't know if they were happening prior to that, but from what I understand, a whole bunch of people were going to Yonge and Dundas Square, essentially saying that the government was trying to infringe on their rights. So let's take it back to the basics, you know, some civics and careers. Let's go back to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. You do have the right to protest. No one is denying your right to protest. The issue is when you are protesting in a large amount of people, which is literally one of the fastest ways to catch the very disease that we're not trying to get and spread. So the issue is the issue isn't the protesting itself, from what I understand, it's how the protesting is being done. Some people from the videos I've kind of seen just like on various social media sites, like some people who are protesting with masks on. And then I remember over the summer when we were first starting to learn about how the vaccines were going to come into effect, there was an issue and there was a lot of protests in regards to the vaccines. So if you're going to protest, fine. I don't think that the government is trying to infringe on your right to protest. I think they're trying to state that if you are going to do so, you need to be doing so in a manner that isn't a public safety concern, which I absolutely agree with. Because again, so let's say if you're at a protest, you then get sick, you're then going to use the very same system, which is set up to try and protect you from the said virus that you're trying to protest against. So make it make sense. Like, if you're going to get sick from the protest and you're going to go to the publicly funded healthcare system, I then, through my tax-paying dollars, am then going to pay for the consequences of you, quote unquote, acting a fool because you decided to go out and do something that you weren't supposed to do. So if people want to continue protesting, go ahead. But I think that actions have consequences and we need to be mindful of, stating that, the government is totalitarian and trying to infringe on your rights when they're actually just trying to put in protective measures in place so that you don't do something that's going to impact a lot of people. So I'm very much against people who are saying that the government is trying to block their right to do so. I don't agree with that in any way, shape, or form. I disagree with people purposely gathering for just the sake of doing so without acknowledging the consequences, and that there are people who are very much going out and risking their lives every day when you then get sick and end up in the ICU to make sure that you don't die. So frankly, get it together. Like, you're old enough to know better to not do that. There's no excuse.
Thank you, Akuah. And I just want to, this brings us so close to this section of the discussion. And I just want to thank all the panelists for their input and contribution. We are now going to move on. We're switching now the focus to the audience, and I'll be introducing you now to our co-moderator. Keisha, I apologize if I do not pronounce your last name correctly. I'm not good at that. So Keisha Lapatia, I hope I pronounced it right. And Keisha is our co-moderator, and she's a member of the Ajax Pickering chapter, and she will now be taking questions from the chat and from any pre-registered questions which we have had before. I now move over to you, Keisha.
Hi, Angela, and all the panelists and all the members of the community. Thank you. And actually, my last name it's pronounced Lakpatia.
Lakpatia, okay. I was going to say, yeah. I'm like, is it pat or pay,
Yeah, it has a East Indian background to it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we did have a few questions by the audience ahead of time upon registration. And I think I'm gonna, a couple of questions might be just for anyone who'd like to answer, while others I think I might pose directly to a particular panelist, if that's okay. So one of the questions is, what does the term Black excellence mean to you? And I think I would like to pose that to Kadine.
Thank you. What Black excellence means to me is, I think a lot of the things we do is Black excellence. I think seeing Black people persevere through all the barriers that have been set up for us and just all the systemic racism. I think seeing us persevere despite that and just be, just great, just contributing to our community, contributing to the system. Like, I think, it's just a very broad term.
Okay. Anyone else would like to add on to that, or their own opinion on what that means to them? No one on the panel?
Yeah, I feel like I couldn't have said that better myself. It's like just being able to thrive despite all the obstacles put against you. I feel like that's Black excellence, which is Black normalcy as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Another question that came from an audience member is, what are examples of good strategies to use when applying for grants and scholarships for graduate school? And what are some budgeting tips that we can apply now so that we will be better equipped for future major purchases, such as buying a house or moving out, for example? And I would leave that open to anyone who is willing to answer that question or can answer that question.
May I jump in and answer?
Of course.
So I've actually been through this process. So when I was applying for grad school, it was literally right after I finished my undergrad. And so, sorry, just to clarify, so there's somewhat of a two-parter. So they're asking what you can do in terms of helping to save up for grad school and then financials afterwards.
Yeah, what are some good examples or good strategies to use when applying for grants and scholarships for graduate school? And then what are some budgeting tips that would help to better equip you to buy like large purchases later?
Okay, so essentially budgeting during undergrad would be the best way, I think, to kind of prepare for grad school. Being mindful that applying for grad school is actually very expensive. Each application, I remember when I was doing it about 2 years ago, it ranges from $150 or $100 and so dollars, and that's a non-refundable fee that just automatically goes to the university to look at your applications. So if it's something you really are thinking about doing, I would definitely say in around your third year, start looking into the schools and the application processes for the schools that you want to apply to, and actually start saving from then, so that when you actually get to your fourth year, if you decide to apply right before you're about to finish undergrad, or if you're about to apply right after you finish your undergrad, where again, depending on your loan status, if you got loans and stuff, in terms of the interest rates ending and all of that stuff, it's not as overwhelming. I think that's something that I kind of wasn't able to do because I started applying right after I finished undergrad. So that was a little bit weary in terms of kind of then getting the funds to apply to all these places and all that stuff. And then I would say in terms of building more financial literacy, in terms of the grants and stuff as well, talk to your professors. They're also a really, really good resource in terms of helping you find grants of things that they're doing research for themselves, that they can hire a student on to help assist with. That's something that a lot of people, I think, don't necessarily take advantage of in their undergrad experience, because they can also be really good resources in terms of not only supporting you in terms of letters and such, but really helping you through the process, because a lot of them in terms of academia have done it themselves for various research grants. And then I would say in terms of after, every bank that you're a part of, you actually get technically free consulting advice from financial advisors. So I would really take advantage of them. They were really helpful for me when I was when I finished undergrad going into grad school in terms of helping with my loans and such. They're a really great resource. They have a lot of really cool apps and tools where you can literally let's say put in a recent pay stub, and then you can kind of make your own budget, and they can tell you very much every single, I'm with TD, so just being biased in that sense. So literally every single time money goes in and out of my bank account, it then goes into a separate app, which tells you the categories. So at the end of the month, you can actually see how much money went towards each category in terms of managing your spending. That's something really good to think about. And as well, if you're thinking about savings accounts, they can really help you in terms of noticing the difference between mutual funds, registered retired savings plans, which aren't tax deductible, the tax and all of that stuff. And then it's also really good in terms of when you're thinking about buying a house, in terms of knowing if you put funds into an RESP, you're actually able to take that money out to buy your first home and the taxes that come in and out of that. So they're a really great resource. And again, they're literally any bank that you bank with has that resource available to you. So I would say definitely contact someone from your local bank. And again, Whippy just posted a really good resource in terms of financial literacy. I know the government is now going to start putting financial literacy into schooling in terms of the education system, because I had to find out all of that on my own when I applied for loans for university. And that was just like mind-boggling. But I think now that I'm an adult and I now pay my own bills and manage my own expenses and have my savings, it's really, really good to have, just in terms of, because you work hard for your money, right? You want to make sure that it's going towards your future and that you're able to save and do the things that you need to do while also paying back any loans or anything that you may have.
Great, thank you. That was a very well broad answer, and that you're able to assist a lot of different people. So moving forward, we did have another question come through, and it says here, in what ways have you become stronger as a result of your experiences throughout 2020? And I'm hoping that one of the youth panelists could speak on that.
Can I comment?
Of course.
I think I've definitely become stronger in I know this is not the case for everyone, but for me personally, I've definitely become stronger in my academics, surprisingly, with being online for schooling. And I think also because I was in the higher grades of high school when this happened, in terms of grade 11, second semester when it started, and of course, currently in grade 12. I was doing courses that I really liked and that were super interesting to me. So since it was actually sparking my interest in something that I love, it made me more passionate. Like, that's what COVID really taught me, is that like when you love something and when you're really passionate about it, make sure that you're dedicating time towards it. And that doesn't just have to go towards school, that also goes towards your friends and your family and your loved ones. Dedicate time towards them, because you never know when or what length of time you have with them. So totally seizing the moment and just reflecting on life. That's what it's taught me.
Okay. Anyone else of the youth panelists would like to comment or answer? No? Okay. Another question that came through was, what are some of the recommendations you would make for the existing Ontario Youth Action Plan programs in the Durham region? Anyone is able to tackle that question?
Sorry, can you repeat it one more time, please?
The question is, what are some of the recommendations you would make for the existing Ontario Youth Action Plan programs within the Durham region?
If nobody wants to go ahead, I could speak to that a bit.
And even if it's not Durham region, maybe with your own region, because I mean, it might be something that could assist anyone.
Well, I don't really know the nitty gritty and specifics of the action plan, but an approach that I try to personally take, and I suggest everyone else takes when trying to offer help and just trying to offer social relief. I could relate it back to a story that one of my mentors told me. So basically the story is that when he was in graduate school, he alongside a few other of his colleagues, they were all gonna graduate. So they're like, you know, life's been pretty good to us. God's been good. Let's go do something for another community. So they went to, I believe it was Africa, a small community in Somalia. And what they tried to accomplish there was to like provide social aid to this community. So the way that they went about that after spending a lot of time with the community is like, so my mentor and a bunch of his colleagues, they by themselves concluded it would be very great to just put a well into this community, because they noticed that the woman would have to travel miles and miles walking for water. So they're like, why not? Let's try to do this for the community. So long story short, they did that and came back to York University to graduate. And after they graduated, they returned to this small community where they did this social initiative. To their surprise, when they came back, the well was like trashed. It was filled to the top with garbage, and the community wasn't really using it. And they found that the women were still walking miles to go to the water. So yeah, it was like, to their surprise, they were kind of like confused because they thought they did something good there. So he said later that night, like they had dinner with the community, And he's like, all of them were like just so like flabbergasted. They just had to figure out like why, like, you know, like why didn't you guys like treat this with love and care that we intended it to be treated with. So when they asked the community that, they confronted the community and asked like what was wrong with the well, and what the community said was that you guys did not consult us when putting the well in our community. Like, you just determined that this is what we needed, and you came here and threw this at our community without taking our opinion into consideration at all. So just all to say that I feel like whenever you're making decisions and trying to come to conclusions, I think that a voice that you need to try to reflect is the voice of the community. And I feel like it's very important for us not to make decisions for them, but to include them in that process. So whether that looks like civic engagement or like just weekly meetups or anything, really, I feel like the voice of the community is one that should be amplified.
Definitely, which definitely goes back to what Akuah had said earlier.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and we do have a question that came through on the chat. And the question is, what is one big thing young adults lost in 2020 and one thing that they gained in 2020 that would help them build character as we move forward into the 20s? Darren, you could go ahead, you could unmute.
Yeah, so one thing I think that all of us as young adults that we gained is adaptability. I heard someone use that word earlier, and I feel like that's going to be the catalyst for our lives going forward. I can speak for myself in saying that things have kind of been like very general for me. I don't really go outside of my comfort zone, and so I've never had to adapt before. So this situation, this pandemic has kind of forced me and maybe other people to learn how to adapt. But you know, things in life, they don't stay the same forever, and so it's something that we're gonna have to learn eventually. So I feel like it's better that we learn it at this age versus you know, when we're older. One thing that I think that we lost was like we lost like a lot of time, like a year for us to like, you know, do certain things that could impact our community positively. Like there's restraints on the things that we could do. And so we lost, as weird, like as basic as the answer is, we lost a lot of time, because that time could have been used advancing our communities, and we still did, but we could have did a lot more had there hadn't been restraints on a lot of the stuff that we were trying to do, at least for us in our community.
Okay. And I see we have one other question here, and that could be for each member of the panel if they choose to answer. Where do you see yourself in 2 to 5 years from now, post-COVID?
Sorry, can I quickly go back to the last question?
Oh, definitely. Yes, go ahead, Akuah.
So I think when I reflect on the events that happened over the summer, I think, and I don't mean to be like morbid or sad sounding, but I think a lot of Black youth lost their innocence. Like, I think that this has really been a profounding time in being a Black body to really reflect on what it means to be Black. And while you want to stand in your heritage and your pride, also being mindful that like you are going to be subject to like potentially like more criticism and more violence. And I think just like having that on display for such a long period of time that video and those images were being shared, even prior to the George Floyd incident happening, I really think about lately like how Black youth are growing up and are very much becoming desensitized to these acts and the impact that it's having on our mental health. And I don't think that's a good thing. So I think when we kind of shifting back a little bit to the question of like, did you get stronger during this time? I don't think a lot of people did. And I think that's absolutely okay. Like, I know for myself, like a couple days after those images were shown, my mom and I had a very like frank conversation about like her essentially being scared of like me going to protest and like getting that phone call that something has happened. And I just like had to break down, and I cried and I cried, and I went off social media for like a week, and it was great. And so I think that like we're also being mindful that we're growing up in a time where no one else is experiencing anything that's ever happened. in such a way that's on display, and we're losing our innocence because of it. And I think that a lot of people don't either consider or care about that, and that's awful. Sorry, I just had to say that. I thought about that as we were speaking, and I'm like, I don't see what we've gained from this. Like, I being a Black body and being subject to all this, I don't know what people have. If you've gained resilience and adaptability, absolutely understand, and I agree, and I'm so happy for you if you've been able to see that. I think a lot of people are just tired. Like, I am one of them. Like, I'm just tired. I want out of this. I like, nobody wants to wake up and just feel oppressed all the time. Like, if you can get through this and have a smile, and that's why I try to be thankful for the things that I've, like, that I'm still employed, that my family and friends are relatively happy and healthy, but like, you can't help but feel sad about it. So like, if they're gonna put in anything into an action youth plan, get people counseling, let people talk about things, because I think that's what we're missing.
Right, right. And I just wanted to ask Cassie, based on what Akuah just said, do you feel, because you said that you've had a lot of discussions with some of your peers on different topics, do you find that is what Akuah said is similar? Have you heard anything like that where they did not feel stronger? They're feeling a little bit, it's too much to see these images. It's like, how have the peers that you've been mentoring, how have they been feeling based on what Akuah just said?
100%, I can agree with what Akuah said, because not everyone has the privilege, and that's literally the majority of people not having the privilege to be feeling resilient from the situation. Because, you know, especially during that time with social media, every day you're going on your timelines, and it's like, I hate to like use this, but it's basically trauma porn that you're seeing as a Black youth. And it's insane. You can't just desensitize yourself from it anymore, or say, oh, I'm just not gonna. It was everywhere. It was surrounding us constantly, and we could not take our eyes away from it. And I think one of the things that, like, I think we gain, though, is knowing that there's power in our words, and there's power in the words of other people. Because I've had a lot of people lose friends over the events that have happened over the summer, because some people were posting a lot of propaganda on their stories and saying, oh, this is not real. I just don't comprehend what this means by Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. And, you know, I'm very all lives matter. And I've had a lot of people lose friends over it, and it's been really scary and really sad, but it's crazy. I don't know. It's like the generation, especially with Gen Z, has been really fueled by this whole thing happening. And I loved what someone said about boldness that has come about, because that's so true. I feel like call out culture has definitely become a thing, because people can't get away anymore with just saying the N-word. We're not just going to brush that off if you're not Black and you're using that word. No, we're going to call you out. We're going to contact universities and tell them what you're saying, because we're just not tolerating it anymore. We are sick and tired. And I'm happy that also the media is starting to become more aware of all the things that are going on in the world. And that, because I've seen, like, with a lot of things in like the early 2000s, where using the D slur and the F slur and the N word and having non-POC people use it was like cool and funny and humorous and stuff like that. But I find now we're just not taking that, and we're calling out people, because it's not right. It is not right at all. So definitely power in words has been something that has been gained through this. And knowing that you speaking up and voicing your opinion on things that matter to you can really show the true colors of people and educate others on what's happening. So thank you so much on that point of losing our innocence, because, hey, it's out in the open and we have to start talking about it.
Okay. And I think this is a good time to ask a question to any member of our public official that is here with us. And to any of our MPPs or public officials out there, The question is, as politicians, how can you make sure the young people are at the center of the recovery program? You raise your hands so that we could see if you're able to answer. Any of our public officials on the call? I think
sorry, we just have a hand up and I'm just promoting to panelists so that they can talk. Sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Henry. I'm the chair of the region of Durham. And first of all, thank you for inviting me today. And to the organizers, thank you to the Pickering and Whitby Library and to the Congress of Black Women in Oshawa, Whitby, and Ajax Pickering. Thank you. And you know, a part of it is being here today to listen to you. You know, politicians tend to think of today, not tomorrow or yesterday. And, you know, we live in a country where our history is not perfect. And I think in the region of Durham, what I'm really proud to say is after what happened in July, in August, we held a town hall meeting so we could listen to everyone. And what came from that was that town hall meeting is we realized that we truly needed to make changes within our organization, and council agreed to create a new office and hire a director and staff to fund it. And if you haven't seen the announcement, I'm proud to say that we have had a great hire who is going to go out into the community and listen to what's going on. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the person we hired, if that's okay, so that you'll know that we are listening to you. Would you be okay with that if I can see a nod?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So this amazing person, Allison Hector Alexander, is a senior director and an advocate of policy professional who works in human rights, equity, anti-racism, training, anti-discrimination, oppression, and accessibility organizations within the not-for-profit and the education sector for 20 years. Allison worked at Durham College, where she held a role of Director of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and in the position, she had oversight over the college's diversity, inclusion, the Ontario Access and Inclusion Program, RISE, Sexual Violence Mandate, the First Peoples Indigenous Center, and orientation and transformation programming for all new students. I'm excited because she is going to be our lead in the communities with her team, and they're going to go out there. But people often talk about listening and putting names out there, but there is a commitment and she will be funded appropriately so that she can go out and do that. Within the region of Durham, I'm proud to say that during COVID, we were able to keep almost all of our staff working so that we can meet the needs of our residents. And you can go online and any of the services that you would have expected before are still there. I'm also proud to say that we have put people on the street with specific purposes. Our paramedic outreach program, where we have a paramedic partnered with a social worker. Or from what happened in July, we have actually hired mental health nurses to work on the road now so that we have coverage 365 days of the year, 24/7, so that when we respond to issues. And the other part that I'm really proud of is that in order for young people, all young people in today's economy, they need hope, and a hope is a job that pays a living wage. And I'm proud to say that you're seeing people come back to Durham region who had left. General Motors is now back, and when they're fully operational, there'll be 2,000 jobs in Durham region that didn't exist. And those jobs are not only jobs assembling vehicles, but they're engineering jobs and other types of high-tech related jobs, including the announcement recently of the autonomous test track, that we've been able to attract companies like Kubota and Toyota and investment in our agricultural industry. And of course, when Durham Live opens up and as COVID disappears, we'll have all those jobs that will be created there. And trying to go forward and making sure that we make the changes we need so that people can live that dream of a job that pays a living wage. So I think the key is to make sure that, and I'll speak on my behalf, but not all politicians, but on my part is to make sure that I'm available and that I listen and that you hold me accountable. And going forward, a willingness to work together to build a community that we all dream of. You know, our challenge in this country is, you know, we talk about, you know, I'll use women in business, but we don't talk about two of the most amazing women in the history of North America. One, Sarah Breedlove, more people know her as CJ Walker, the first Black woman to become a millionaire in the United States. Or a colleague that she worked with, Annie Malone, who did the same thing. When you talk about our history, you know, in written books, we don't talk about great people in Canada, like Anderson Abbott, the first Black doctor to graduate from the University of Toronto, who went on to tender and look after Abraham Lincoln after he was shot. We need to talk about our history, good and bad, and make sure that we do all the things going forward to continue to make Canada a place where people want to move to and live that dream. So I hope that helps. And I thank you for inviting me today. Kind of a long answer, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to add on to or answer that question of how you'd make young people the center of the recovery program? Any of the MPPs on the line? Okay, so I'll just move on to another question that we have here is, the government made it clear that there's no room for hate, racism, and discrimination in any form in Ontario. Following the global anti-racism outcry, what concrete steps has your government taken to demonstrate that belief? And that'll be a question for any public official that's here with us. Is there any other, I'm not sure who's on the line with us. Okay. I think I'll go back to one of the questions we had from an audience, because I'm not sure what public officials are with us at the moment. Just to any of the panelists that we have here, who or what has inspired you to be on this panel? Like, what was your purpose or what was your reason for wanting to be here for us to hear your voice? And that could be for anyone.
Sorry, I'll just answer that.
Go ahead, Kadine.
For myself, I would definitely say it was my mom. Both her and I work in social services, and both of us, especially during this pandemic, we've been actively seeking ways in which we can contribute back to our community and support our community, whether it's buying Black, whether it's just like going out to protest and making our voices heard, whether it's like joining different like community events online. And just contributing. I think that's definitely what inspired me to be a part of this discussion. And just being on this panel and seeing like the people here, like everyone has like such great involvement with the community. I definitely really wanted to be a part of the discussion to learn more from them and to be able to take it back into my profession and into my own like personal like networking space.
Okay, great. Anyone else would like to share why they decided to be on this panel today?
I'd like to share. So I would like to express my extreme gratitude, thanks, like forever admiration for my Congress exec, Vanessa, Judy, and Angela. You're all three like just so wonderful. And I know you're listening, so that's why I'm doing this now. But since joining in 2018, when I moved back, they've just been just an epitome of support. And I think just being in a different life stage than the three of them, they're all amazing mothers and businesswomen, and they're just phenomenal women. And I just hope that like when I get to that point in my life, when I have a family, just to pass down the same wisdom, knowledge, and laughs that they constantly give me. Like I never seem like the youngest exec member among them. We're always just such a team, and they're always just like there to just be so encouraging. So when I was, I guess, nominated by them to be on the panel, obviously I said yes. They've just been such a tremendous support, and I just have such admiration for them and everything they've done to build this chapter and just really be supportive of Black women in the community. And I just think that, you know, and they don't do it for praise. You can tell that they're just amazing women who want to support the next generation of amazing women, and they've done that for me. And I'm just so incredibly thankful to have, by chance or by cosmic universe, to just be on the same team as them. So I just want to say thank you very much to the three of you for always having my back and giving me all the admiration and support and love. It's extremely appreciated.
Great, thank you, Akuah. And it is always good to feel appreciated and to acknowledge, and then obviously then thank. So thank you for that. I see here that someone has raised their hand. Deidre Newman, are you still with us?
Yes, good afternoon. I wanted to thank the Black Congress of Women and the youth panelists for a tremendous discussion. I wish also to express my appreciation to Chair Henry for his integrity in addressing directly the issues relating to the Black community. I have been part of a Durham Community Action Group, which has consulted with the Black community, and am presently providing support to the Durham Community Action Group, which is a group of residents from Whitby who since 2008 have reached out to support Black youth and Black families of African Canadian descent on education and health issues. I think your words today are very important. Your thoughts are the future. And in Whitby, we have a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and are proceeding with training and a plan to address the very serious issues of consultation, so that there will be a town plan which is consistent with the region plan and with your thoughts. So thank you so much for the opportunity to listen today.
Thank you very much, Deidre. I think we do have...
we have Vanessa Reed as well.
Vanessa, okay. Vanessa, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. It's so lovely to see you guys here. I'm just, my heart is so warm in seeing all of you. And I want to extend, first of all, a big thank you for Dr. Joseph for selecting some really awesome guys. You guys are just amazing, as well as Cassie, you know, you've always been available. Kadine, I don't know what to say to you guys. Like, seriously, it's just amazing. Akuah, no words, just no words. I did put a question out there. I know it kind of jumped over. So I really am interested in finding out from each and every one of our panelists, where do you see yourselves in about 2 to 5 years from now, post-COVID? I've only left to go get my laundry, and I didn't hear the question answered the first time. So that's my question. Just like, you know, where do you guys see yourselves? What is the vision that you guys have set for yourselves within the next 2 to 5 years? And let's just say we've eradicated post, COVID. That's the question.
Yeah, I'd love to answer that. I really like that question. Well, for starters, okay, so in 2 to 5 years, I would be 22 to 25, considering I'm 20 right now. So in 2 years, I think I would have about $5,000 invested in the stock market. I would be entering my first home, but I don't know if for those who are familiar with real estate, I hope to get like a duplex and then of course rent that out and begin a career in real estate as well. A duplex is like if you were to live in your basement and rent out your top floor and like basically live for free, have somebody pay your mortgage for you. That's what I want to do for my first house. Aside from that, I would be entering teachers college because I'm currently in my 3rd year of university. So I'd be in my 2nd year of teachers college. I'm getting closer to my goal of teaching law and French. And I would also, hopefully I will be an anchor or still an anchor's assistant at Generation Chosen, still facilitating mental health workshops. And I also hope to just be a very significant personality in the Black community, like just delivering opportunities to those who were like historically denied seats at tables like this. Yeah, that's for starters. I really want to write a book. That's something I'm very passionate about. And maybe Darren and I will finally do a vending machine. We've been talking about that for a long time, and a podcast. So yeah, there's like a lot in store. I'm really looking forward to what the next 2 to 5 years will behold. And I will have a 100% average in school.
Sounds great.
I mean, sorry, were you gonna say something?
No, I was just letting you know you could go ahead.
Oh, okay, cool. I was gonna say, I might as well follow up because I feel like me and Shamar basically have the same goals. We've been talking about this kind of stuff for forever. Cause I've known him for like 3 years. So, yeah, I plan on finishing teachers college too. Hopefully, I want to teach humanities, which would be social science in high schools. Hopefully, I want to teach in the community that I grew up in, or a community similar to mine, just because I want an example of a male Black role model in the community, just for other kids to model, because that's what I had. And Dr. Joseph Smith, who's our mentor right now and the head of Generation Chosen. Like Shamar said, I plan on hopefully being an anchor, still being someone involved in Generation Chosen, possibly even other nonprofits in the area or beyond the area if possible. At 22, I don't know if I'll be owning a house. I might just live with my mom still and save. We'll see. But like,
you can live with me.
But yeah, and as for like what Shamar was saying with the podcast, I don't know. I want to do it. I think I have things to say. I don't know if people will listen and got to see what happens. But yeah, I want to graduate school and just look forward to the future. Hopefully save, like Shamar said. And yeah, those are my plans for the next 2 to 5 years.
Excellent. Anyone else would like to add?
I'd like to add.
Yeah, go ahead.
So first, to Darren and Shamar, please start that podcast. I will gladly listen. If you need seed money, I've got some stuff saved up from COVID. Please let me know. I think you two are absolutely amazing, and we need more strong Black male role models in our community. So thank you very much for being here. You have a lot to say, Darren. Trust me, people want to hear what you have to say, so please do. And I think for myself, in 2 to 5 years, I hope to be a registered nurse on the front lines working in community health, particularly with our substance abuse and homeless population. Hopefully still being in Durham, because believe it or not, Oshawa actually has one of the highest opioid uses in all of Canada and North America. So it really is an underprivileged population that I really think we need to look at. I hope to, in 5 years, hopefully have all of my 2 degrees student debt paid off, saved a little bit more something, and hopefully submitted a policy brief to get a safe injection site going in Oshawa, because I think one is really needed in terms of really promoting harm reduction in our community, and hopefully supporting a housing project in Durham region as well.
Okay. Hope those things work out for all of you. Anyone else would like to add? I see a couple of hands are raised. Go ahead, Kadine.
Oh, sorry. In 2 to 5 years, I hope to get my master's of social work. So I do want to go back to school. I did take some time off just to get some experience, but I'm really ready to go back and get that master's. I also would hope to get more into policy work, specifically child welfare in the Black community. And then I'm recently taking on a mentorship role where I do mentor Black youth around Ontario virtually in underserved communities. So I would hope to get more involved with that, maybe become like spearheading the program or spearheading my own program. That would be something that I'd be really interested in doing.
Okay, I see there is an Esther, excuse me, with their hands up. Esther, if you're still on the line.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. It's Esther Ford from Cultural Expressions, and I'm so pleased to be attending this wonderful event. I want to thank all the Congress members for presenting it, and definitely our panelists. I must say, I feel so much confidence in our future moving forward. I see the representation and it makes my heart feel full. And I'm so very proud of each and every one of you. I have a question for our two young men panelists. As a mother with two boys, how have you experienced any overt racism? As we know, young male, Black male seem to be more targeted. Any circumstances where you don't feel safe? And how can we change this and also change the perception of a young Black male maybe walking down the street with a hoodie? So that's my question for our male panelists.
I would love to answer that. Oh, yo, please, you can go ahead too, please.
Go ahead, you go first. I'll go after you.
You both can go, so one at a time.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you said how can we basically eradicate the overt racism? So first and foremost, I feel like my experience to racism mostly has to do with when I'm at work. I work at Costco, so like there's a lot of microaggressions in the workplace. I think that this like varies from workplace to workplace, but yeah, like I feel like Costco is very hierarchical in that sense, if I said the word right. Like and yeah, like they really don't treat you well at all. Like, but I feel like what we can do is like what Cassie said earlier, is like the call out culture, like that notion, like you have to almost call out these microaggressions and address them. Because I find, like with my experience in the community, some white people don't even know they're being racist. So I feel like that's somewhere to start. Like you gotta inform these people on our culture, and like, you know, like they touch your hair because they're fascinated with it, but that's a microaggression, you know, like, so things like that, like we just have to help educate them on why certain things are inappropriate. And I feel like on the other side of that, it goes back to the self-identity piece of our young men and women and everyone in our community. Like we just have to have like a heightened a sense of self-worth, to the sense that like we can meet in the middle. So like they have to do their job of becoming educated, and we have to do our job of, number one, educating them and not being offended, and like almost not even like just having that heightened sense of or capability, like being able to operate in society at your fullest potential, so that nobody could even really tear you down, you know, because you're so full of yourself, not full of yourself, but you're sure of yourself. Like you no longer have this imposter syndrome. Like you no longer feel like you don't belong, because I feel like our anxiety really contributes to this. Like, oh, is this person doing this? Is this person doing that? So I feel like just through us being confident and developing skills, and on the other side of that, like just educating people on the other who express the oppression to us. I feel like it's a two-part thing that we need to do.
Okay.
Yeah, so sorry. So like I guess I can speak to the experience. Like, so for me, there's kind of an intersectionality of stereotypes. Like, one, I'm a Black male, and because of where I live too, I guess people just assume, like, I'm from Jane and Finch, right? Which is known notoriously as a bad area, big air quotes, because it's not. But because of that notion, like, people don't expect me to be able to articulate myself, or they expect me to act belligerent in certain situations. And I feel like some people expect you to be that way, and they try to do things to get it out of you just so that they can prove to other people that this is how we act. And so for like one thing that I've seen Shamar do, what we do is like we've, through our emotional intelligence training, we've learned to keep calm and respond in a manner that they're not likely to expect. That way it's throwing them off. And I feel like that hits them harder than if I was to cuss them or get belligerent as they were expecting, right? Like you feel like you get your anger off, but then they're like, yep, this is exactly what I wanted. This is exactly how I knew he would act. And so honestly, I guess it's hard to say like anybody will ever be okay with a black guy wearing a hoodie down the street, but I guess in situations where that kind of stuff happens, you have to just be able to respond in a proper way. Like I can also give a story. Like one time this old lady was doing groceries, so I offered to help her, and she looked at me and clutched her groceries, and she's definitely struggling, but says, no, it's okay, I can go by myself. And I said, okay. But I seen her struggling, I felt so bad, but it's because I think she was scared that I was gonna, like, if I not follow her, but took her groceries to her home, I might steal something from her. Another situation that's happened to me is I was in a Dollarama, and one of the workers was following me and literally went to another shopper and said, watch this, I bet you he's gonna steal that. In front of my face, like, that makes absolutely no sense. And I was young then, so I was belligerent and I got upset. And the security dragged me out of the Dollarama like I was in the wrong. But yeah, so like in dealing with those situations, as I've gotten older, I've just kind of learned how to cope and kind of deal with those situations in a different way.
Could I, if I may, a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Shamar.
So like what Darren just said, like our emotional intelligence allows us to respond in emotionally intelligent ways, but I feel like that almost puts the onus on us to like positively react to racism. Like I feel like there should just be no racism to react to anyway. Like that's something that frustrates me. It's like you're presented with this, and then you're criminalized just by your identity, and then you have to navigate that as well. Like plus you have to respond in a respectable manner. Like that's just very frustrating. I just wanted to add that.
Okay. And I believe we have Mr. Mark Holland on the line with us. He has his hand up.
And he should just be coming back in as a panelist in 1 second.
Okay.
Perfect. Same with Ron Hooper.
Okay.
I think, Ron, if you wanted to jump in while we're waiting for Mark to come back in. Perfect.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Ron Hooper. I'm the local counselor for Ward 2 in the municipality of Clarington. And I sit as the council liaison to our Diversity and Inclusion Committee. It's a fairly new committee. We started this term of council long before, well, not long before, but before everything sort of was upset in what had gone on. I do appreciate the discussion that has taken place today, and it's been refreshing to hear your thoughts. Our committee is some of your youthful generation that is participating on that committee, and we've dealt with a lot of issues, and it's refreshing to hear Chair Henry say in regards to the new director that's been brought on board as far as the region, because I think that needs to happen. There needs to be a strong voice so that all the municipalities throughout Durham region are speaking from the same sort of page, and so it's refreshing to hear that, and I look forward to working with the youth of today, and I'm really pleased with what I'm hearing today. As my side gig or other job that I do have, I have a small independent business that's located in historic downtown Bowmanville, and we've been there for 75 years. So it has been a very interesting time. I mean, we're celebrating, if you want to call it that, the 1-year anniversary of going through this pandemic together. And it has been a very, very, very challenging time for small independent business. So I hear what you're saying in regards to business and things like that. And, you know, it's all good information that that we will bring forward to our committee, our diversity committee. And I'm looking forward to working with the regional people too as well. Thank you very much for allowing me to sit in, and for, I hope everybody can hear me because I'm having some bandwidth problems here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And we were able to hear you well. For any of the other public officials that are still on the line with us, we did have a couple other questions. So I'm hoping that someone could answer some of these questions. One is, most youths are said to be hungry for change, but they are politically underrepresented. How does your program or any program out there help the youth become more politically involved? Not sure if Mark is still with us, or, oh, Ron, would you like to answer?
Well, I can start a little bit of the discussion. In Clarington, we have a youth committee that's very involved. We didn't, unbeknownst to us, they're starting to become more involved in the political process, and we're starting to listen to some of the comments that they have. We just had somebody come, one of the groups came to our council, I think it was last week, our committee meeting, and spoke. And so they've got some good ideas, and they were actually very voiced their concerns in regards to our boundary review that we tried to undertake this term of council. So we try to involve the youth of today and get their opinions, because it's very important, because they are the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Anyone else would like to answer that question?
It does look like MP Holland will be coming back on shortly. There are just some computer issues.
Okay. While Mr. Holland tries to get back on, I see that there is a Mitchell D that has raised their hand.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, it's Don Mitchell. I'm the mayor of Whitby. And interesting discussion.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Much like Clarington.
Sorry, I think that was me. I think I promoted as a panelist at the wrong time. Sorry, so you might be able to unmute again, Mitchell D.
There we are.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a youth council, and actually Councillor Newman is our council designate. They hold multiple events, and certainly that it's a very diverse council, just as our community is increasingly diverse. But certainly those young people, you can see them all becoming engaged and empowered and very comfortable around politicians and politics, if I could put it that way. So that's certainly the direction that we take in terms of trying to directly engage. But I do have to say that as you would be aware, Durham Region has hired a director that's going to lead a dedicated division to addressing racism and diversity, and anti-Black racism is certainly going to be the first item on the list, and 2 more staff members. So from a Whitby perspective, though, our local diversity committee has had a couple of great webinars, and there's actually a report tomorrow on our new training for staff training in addressing unconscious bias and becoming more comfortable with diversity issues. But that regional department will really be key, because they will bring a lot of expertise and a lot of focus, and we'll start beginning to see some actions being taken instead of, again, there's a lot of discussion. There has been a lot of discussion for a long time here, but in terms of bringing forward actual actions, analyzing those and deciding what is the, the best way forward with the advice of certainly everyone here and everyone else who's engaging on this important topic. So that's really much what I see as a key initiative, because I don't think it's just a matter of doing something. It's a matter of doing something that's intelligent and informed and evidence-based, that will overcome the challenges that are being faced. So that's our perspective in WIPI, and with a lot of confidence in our diversity and inclusion committee. They give us great guidance, and we'll continue to do what we can do, what we believe will be very helpful with your advice on addressing this and getting on it, because it's, for me, it's just part of what Canada should be about. What I think we all share as Canadians, as Ontarians, is that everyone should be able to achieve to the very best of their ability and succeed to the best of their ability, and there should not be any artificial barriers in the way of that success. For me, that's really where Canada has been going and should keep going, and we're pretty unique that way from a global context. Very committed to multiculturalism and the success of diversity. So we have to build on that strength, knowing there's still a lot more hurdles to overcome. But I appreciate all your insights today. So thank you.
Thank you, Don. I see that we have Mark on the line. You can unmute, Mark, and if you'd like to answer any of the questions that has already been posed.
Thank you so much, Keisha. Thanks so much for the opportunity to join you today, and to say that while I was coming from something else, I was really moved by a number of the conversations, and I want to come back to them in a second, but I want to answer a question that was posed first, which is a very fair question, which is, what is the federal government doing? And I think the best way I can describe our response is to invest in building community strength and capacity, both to combat racism, but also to support Black entrepreneurship and success generally. So I look at the African Angels Alliance locally. I look at the phenomenal work that the WMRCC is doing, and in both examples, we've been able to provide funding at a local level to support them. And to do that across the country in initiatives that are going to empower and strengthen both change and innovation. But I think, more broadly, if I could just step back and say, what a tough year it has been, in particular for the Black community, where there have been injustices that have been very public. And we heard just in the last little bit about injustices that are felt that are much less public. And how profoundly unfair that is. And it was just a few moments ago, as Shamar was talking about the fact that nobody should have to put up with that, and that, Darren is trying to talk about, how do you deal with it in a way that's polite and nice, and these are things that you absolutely are totally unacceptable, and that we are on a journey to rid our society of. And confronting some of the systemic racism that is there, that's inside the system, that is inside our day-to-day lives, that is so totally unacceptable. And I think as we do that, the understanding is that it's a big challenge, but you also, I hope, see that there's a lot of really amazing allies. The Black Lives Matter movement, when you see somebody, talking about that or stepping forward and saying they don't want this to be the world that they live in, maybe they themselves don't know how to change it. And I have to say to you that I don't always know the answer of how to change this, but I join in your indignation, and I celebrate you when you call it out, that I should be called when something is wrong to stand behind you and say, that's not okay. And what I see happening today is incredible. So many young people with hopes and aspirations and are going to be challenged. But I would say to you, do what's in your heart and support one another for doing it. When Darren, you're talking about doing a podcast, or Shamar is talking about writing, go and do that and celebrate one another doing that. You know, there's going to be people in your life that tell you what is impossible. And, you know, there are obstacles that are placed in front of you that are not fair, that are harder than other people, and for no reason that is just. And we must eliminate this. Your journey may be harder by simply the virtue of the color of your skin. And we need to eradicate that in our society. But don't let that hold you back on your dreams. People who faced enormous challenges and injustices were able to rise to that and find allies and move forward and do extraordinary things. You will be constantly told what you can't do, what you're not capable of, but listen to your heart, listen to what you believe you can do, and just take it one step at a time. And when somebody calls you and looks at you and sees you and recognizing what you're doing is great, those are the people to listen to. Those are the people to rally around. When the people try to pull you down and tell you nasty things or treat you in a terrible way, yes, absolutely stand up to it. Absolutely call it out. Demand to me and to others that it not happen, but do not take it into your heart. Do not let their poison touch you. Keep following your dreams. Keep fighting for what you know you can create. And I will do everything I can to hopefully put whatever wind I can in your sails.
Great, thank you, MP Holland. I believe we have one more hand raised until we move on to get back on with Angela for some closing questions. There's Vanessa on the line again. Are you still with us, Vanessa Reed?
Yeah, let me just take myself off of mute. So just did that. So on this topic, I obviously I'm not a politician. I've been with the Congress of Black Women for about going 13 years now. And one of the things that I know, and maybe Shamar or Darren may be able to address this, I know that Generation Chosen is, especially Dr. Joseph, is very involved. If I'm not mistaken, he sits on the board of Operation Black Vote. And that is providing the Operation Black Vote Canada provides that leadership training and education, you know, for young men and women or anyone of color who would like to get into politics. There's boot camps. I know that, you know, it helps them through navigating through that, the nomination process, how to fundraise and volunteering and training and providing them with, you know, information on how to build a successful campaign. There's youth engagement, there's dinner and politics. Do any one of you guys want to kind of touch on that for just a moment? Because me personally, sometimes if you wait for those doors to be open for you guys to go out there and vote and get what you need from the local government, federal government, it's not coming. And if it's coming, it's not coming fast and forceful enough. So knowing what Dr. Joseph is involved in on your side, are any of you guys involved in any of this Operation Black Vote within Generation Chosen? And if you want to touch on that just a little bit. And I mean, I would love to hear from both of you. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so earlier Shamar mentioned how we specifically have like a tight, we're kind of close with the Green Party. In terms of like our civic engagement piece, Dr. Joseph Smith has done a great job of, he's actually brought in representatives from all major political parties to come and speak to the youth, just so that they could have an overall sense of what politics they might be interested in. One thing we constantly preach is like, the things that happen in 10 years are based on the decisions we make now type of thing. Like the politicians, they're gonna affect our lives and the young people make the decisions. So a lot of people turning 18 that can vote. And so what we can do is just, you know, dish out the information and hope that they make a decision that they actually is informed, you know? Excuse me, sorry. For me, since being a part of Generation Chosen, it's actually made me have an interest in politics. I didn't really care before. I just thought I'd show up and vote. I didn't even know that I'd even have to register. I didn't know about literally anything. Me personally, I'm not involved in Operation Black Vote because I missed the deadline to sign up. But Shamar is, so he can talk about that part.
Yeah, I can jump in. With respect to my involvement in Operation Black Vote Canada. I kind of spoke to it earlier. I am a part of the 1834 Fellowship, where it's basically they scope out 40 high potential Black youth and expose them to political opportunities. And just like I said earlier, through this opportunity, I was able to land a mentor, Steve Anderson, who is the mayor of Shelburne. I'm not sure if you guys know where that is. That's pretty far from Toronto. As far as political engagement, I love politics. I can say that boldly. And I actually got the opportunity last week to support, I think his name is D. Tyler Robinson. I don't know if I can be telling you guys this, to be honest, but that he's running for NDP, and I'm gonna be helping him on his campaign. So like we're actually making him a TikTok right now. So like it's kind of fun. Like we're kind of trying to make him in touch with the younger audience, and we're trying to advocate for that youth vote. Like he's running for the Scarborough riding. And yeah, so I'm also deeply rooted in that community, as well as Jane and Finch, because I lived there for a while. Like I moved from Jane and Finch to Scarborough about a year ago. So yeah, as far as my involvement with policy goes, thus far, I'm helping D. Tyler Robinson on his NDP campaign for the Scarborough riding. And I am associated with Operation Black Vote Canada's 1834 Fellowship that exposes Black youth to high potential political opportunities. I also had the opportunity to speak with like many people. Like if I were to say their name, like Alex Baddick, who advocates for education law. Like that was near and dear to my heart, because I actually want to get into teaching, and just to see somebody advocating for us in that respective field was very touching. Yeah, I could really continue to go on if we have the time, but yeah, I love politics, simply put.
Thank you, Shamar and Darren. I believe Angela is going to come back in and have a couple of closing questions for us.
Thank you, Keisha.
Thanks, Angela.
Thank you, and thanks to all the questions and the answers that were given. We certainly hear how, just as I mentioned before, how bold and how our youths just take force and go forward. And you know, we just love that. We can see the confidence in them. Thank you so much. So in closing, before we close, I know this question that I'm going to be asking to all the panelists. So some of the answers were already given in, you know, throughout the questions that they asked, but just so each one of the panelists get to close off, I have this one question and it goes for each one of the panelists. So which of the 2020 events had the most impact on you, and what were the lessons learned? Did it help you become more self-aware? And has those events made you rethink your plans beyond 2020? Are you more or less likely to become involved in the political process due to the events of 2020, and why? And I know we hear Shamar, who is so passionate about politics, so we know where his head is in that. But that's a question posed to each panelist. Would you like me to repeat it? Or are you, I see a nod. Okay, so let me go again. Which of the 2020 events had the most impact on you? What were the lessons learned? Did it help you become more self-aware? And has those events made you rethink your plans beyond 2020? And are you more or less likely to become involved in the political process due to the events of 2020? And why? And it's open up for the panelists to answer that question.
So in 2020, some of the events, well, the pandemic for one, but secondly, I would say the George Floyd incident that happened early last year, just because there was a question that actually went missed, but somebody was asking like how did they make me feel as a Black man? And so like for me, seeing that was very difficult, just because I feel like there's a lot of situations where things could have went awry and that could have happened to me in that same scenario. And it seems like even the convenience store owner that called the police was so regretful and saying like, if that ever happens again, if someone ever used a counterfeit $20 bill, I'll never call the police. It feels like the police don't have any remorse or understanding for how to deal with situations when it's Black people. I don't understand where the disconnect is. I guess I do understand it's racism. That's the disconnect. But it's hard to, it's very hard to witness. And so for me, I was just like,
like that could have been me. That could have been any one of us in any situation. It only takes a little thing for the police to respond and assume that you're doing a lot, right? And so I also learned this, but I got to reflect on it when Akuah brought it up earlier, that I learned how I kind of learned how much work we have to do. Like she was mentioning a lot of things are very performative. And so what you realize is that, yeah, it is, like there isn't necessarily the changes that's being made, the changes that are being made that need to be made. There's certain things that I'm seeing and I'm like, they're good first steps, but maybe they're not the steps that we're asking for. I'll give an example quickly. Maybe people have differing opinions, but for me, like changing the name of a syrup and pancake company, I get the trope, like Aunt Jemima, I get the trope, but I feel like there's other things that are more important per se than that to begin with, right? And so there's other things that I would rather dive into. I'd rather that company give 15% of the profits that you make from that syrup to Black communities or something like that. Don't just change, the name to something. I didn't even know what they changed it to, but that's not really relevant. For me, I definitely want to get into politics as well. I feel like it's very important. I feel like for me, instead of having someone possibly represent my opinions, why not me be that person for myself? And I could also be an advocate for people who think similar to me, right? So why not get into politics? I feel like me and Shamar could be a dynamic duo in politics. Who knows, right? Definitely, that's something that I want to do. It's also helped me establish my goals and realize that anything can happen in the future. So things like traveling and enjoying life, I want to do while simultaneously being able to, dive into politics. I don't really want to wait for anything anymore, because like you never know how much time you have or how things can alter your plans, such as a pandemic. So for me, it's like dive into politics. We keep talking about that podcast. I'm realizing start that podcast. Don't wait for anything, because you never know like what the future could hold. So yeah, that's just my answer to that question.
Thank you, Darren. For the next person,
Yeah, I guess I could just add, so like from an emotional standpoint, I feel like the most pressing issue I've faced is like COVID-19, because I feel like what I was saying earlier applies still. Like the pandemic had a unique way in just exacerbating the issues that people of underserved communities faced already, like on an everyday basis, like precarious work, mental health, poverty. It really just shed a light on the fact that now more than ever, representation and advocacy is like needed. So I feel like this played a major role in me loving politics. And I forgot to mention, Darren and I are both part of Anthony Perusa's Ward 7 Youth Council. So that is like another step we're taking in civic engagement. So yeah, I'm definitely more likely to be involved in politics after this year, because just like Darren said, I feel like why not reflect our own views? And it was a rabbi, actually. He had a saying. There was a 3-part question, like, okay, if I am not for me, then who will be? If I am only for me, then who am I? And if not now, then when? So I feel like that like kind of just hits it on the nail. And yeah, like that it really acted as a key guiding principle of conduct for me in making my decision of which career path I wanted to take. So yes, I'm most definitely more inclined to join politics.
Thank you, Shamar. If I could just call upon Cassie. Or maybe Cassie's muted, so whichever, maybe Kadine?
Yeah, I would say an event that happened in 2020 that really changed my perspective on things were the Black Lives Matter protests in the summer last year. I think it was amazing, especially in Durham, to go to the protests and see so many people that were out there in unison with what was going on in the States and what was going on in our own community as well. I think it was amazing that when I went there, it was not only Black people. I saw like a wide variety of people, and in Durham, that made me like very happy to see that everyone was out there advocating for the same issues. It did make me want to get more involved in politics, not just at the federal level, but to make sure that I'm voting at more local levels, to make sure that I'm looking more like into that and when those elections are coming up. And even just to get more involved. Like, as I said, like in the future, I do hope to get into policy work. So it did spark my interest more.
Thank you, Kadine.
Thanks.
I'd like to go next if possible.
Go ahead, Akuah.
Okay, so I know your question had a lot of parts. So obviously, like everyone said, COVID and the Black Lives Matter protests, obviously forefront of everyone's mind throughout the year. In terms of it changing my emotions, I think I talked about it a little bit in terms of like the change of innocence and, you know, like the depression and anxiety that comes from that, that I really think that there needs to be more support for the Black community, especially Black youth on. I think I've always been politically active. Ever since I've turned 18, I could tell you every single person I've ever voted for in every election. I've worked 2 elections, was the poll supervisor for the last federal election we had, helped Brian Dias's local NDP campaign here when Selena had ended her tenure, her last one. And I think in a sense, like this might be a little controversial, but I think it's a point of privilege to not be involved in politics because there somewhat is a sense of feeling that everything is okay and that policy changes don't impact you. So I think that everyone really needs, especially if you're part of a marginalized group, you need to be politically active because your literal vote can be the difference in change that comes here towards your community. I think it's important on all levels. I think when we look at numbers historically, there's been the least engagement in municipal politics and then federal and then provincial, mostly because of the ways in which we interact in our daily lives. Provincial politics tends to be the highest factor, so where it's education, healthcare and such. So I think it's important that everyone get involved in every single aspect of politics. I'm pretty active on social media and being critical of all forms of government. So I think that's also really important because there's nothing that a politician doesn't like to hear more than you will not vote for them in the next election and then seat them. And so that's really important in terms of letting them know that you work for me and I hold your feet to the fire. And if you're not doing what I want you to do, I will vote you out and be very happy as I go to the polls and do it. I have said that to my MPP, so I'm just saying. I think it's also really important to note that, again, I think like Cassandra was saying, that there literally is power in words. So I think that's in terms of going forward, that's literally what we can do in terms of ensuring that our future is set to some degree of normalcy and ensuring that we are no longer marginalized and oppressed, is literally using that voice to change the course of the next 4 or 10 years or however many elections we have upcoming. So be as politically involved as you can. Write to your local members of government. Even if they don't write you back, I assure you somebody gets them. And if you think that they're not really listening to you, call them out on Twitter and social media. That usually works as well in terms of getting their attention.
Thank you, Akuah. And I think our last panelist is Cassie.
All right, so for which events of 2020 most impacted me, I definitely have to agree with the pandemic for one, because it changed the education system forever with the introduction of Zoom and everything like that. So that was pretty crazy for me because I had never been out of school for such a long period of time without actually being in the building. So that totally shifted for me. And of course, everything that happened with Black Lives Matter and George Floyd and how powerful that whole movement was, and seeing people, you know, we love to use the term, you know, stay woke and stuff like that, but people actually finally waking up and seeing everything that's happening in front of them. So the lessons that I've learned and also coupling with the self-awareness aspect that you were talking about, is how to be more introspective and forming and thinking more critically about things that are presented to me, and how to shift that more to my interpersonal strength. So how am I going to communicate what I'm thinking and feeling to other people more appropriately to make sure that they're understanding my point of view and the impact of these important events such as Black Lives Matter and these platforms and why they're important. And in terms of 2020 and like beyond 2020, especially with the 2 to 5 year question that was posed to us, currently I'm 18, and in the 2 to 5 years, I'll be between the ages of 20 and 23 years old. And for me, when it comes to politics, I'm absolutely in love and passionate about it. I actually am accepting my offer soon to Carleton University for public affairs and policy management. And we get the opportunity with that program to do co-op at Parliament. So I am super excited about that, because ever since I was in the 7th grade and I ran for my first election to be president of my school, it totally ignited the flame in me, like, wow, policy is important. And again, with using your voice, things won't happen unless you voice your concern and you show representation matters. So I hope to be a mentor and also that representation for other Black women that are interested in getting into the fields of course, politics and law. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Cass. Thank you, Cassie. Oh, thanks to all our youth that came on, all our panelist members. It's been so amazing. And congratulations to you all. You guys are just doing such great work within the community and amongst yourself. That's wonderful. I just wanted, there was one other panelist that was supposed to be online, Adam Elmi, and he is also from Generation Chosen and as an anchor in training. And unfortunately, a family emergency came up for him and he had to zip off the line. So, and I'm sure he'd have had a lot to have said, but amazing, amazing discussions. It's been great. So this has come to the end of hearing our panelists. So I just want to thank you again for taking the time to participate in this very, very needed discussion. You've all done an excellent job. You've all done great. And after listening to all that you have to say, all that you guys had to say, I know you guys are going to be great leaders and and be mentors, good mentors for the community. Thank you again. At this time, I would like to call upon our regional chair and the CEO of Durham, John Henry, I would like to invite him back to, I was going to say to the podium, but we don't have a podium, but back to the space. So I hope John Henry is still on the line. Pardon me? Oh, there is regional chair John Henry.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry, I missed the internet quit for a second. I missed the question.
No, I did not ask the question. Is that I wanted to ensure that you were on the line before I posed the question, but I will now pose a question for you, Mr. Chair. So it is clear that we cannot have successful economic recovery without youth at the core of the recovery. What are your government's plans to support youth to ensure this result materializes?
So 2 levels of government in Durham region, the upper and the lower tiers. The lower tier municipalities, so Oshawa, Whitby, Ajax, Pickering, Uxbridge, Brock, and Clarington. There are great opportunities for young people to work there during their high school careers and college careers. They employ, as the former mayor of the city of Oshawa, we employ hundreds of young people in really interesting municipal jobs. And I would suggest that for young people today, if you're in school, high school, or in college or university, please look towards us as employers. There are some really good opportunities. The other part from the region's perspective is growing an economy that creates jobs and opportunities where people can live where they grew up close to home. And I'm very proud of the work that we have done during COVID, and you're starting to see the results with some very great announcements, whether it's Durham Live in Pickering or Kubota in Pickering, or Amazon moving into Ajax or Whitby, or Toyota moving into Clarington. That creating an opportunity that allows businesses to relocate to our communities by creating a fund in this term of council for the servicing of employment land, so that we can be ready when companies move here. You know, Durham region is the fastest growing region in all of Ontario, but it's a great place to come and live, but we need to create opportunities and jobs so that people that come here have that opportunity. And I'm also proud to say that at the region, we invest in education, that we invest in our partners at Ontario Tech and Durham College and Trent. And we do that with tax dollars because it's the right thing to do. And in the last budget that passed on Wednesday, we're investing in healthcare, because as residents move into our community, we need to increase our capacity in our healthcare system. So there is a great announcement related to moving forward with Bowmanville Hospital. There'll be some work done in Ajax Hospital, and you'll hear about a new hospital being built somewhere in Durham region over the next few years. So I'm excited about being able to work with my colleagues and councils and all the 8 municipalities to drive those changes that are needed to create the opportunities of hope, which is a job that pays a living wage. I have young girls that don't live within the region, but I would want to create an environment that if they ever chose to move back here for whatever reason, that they would have an opportunity as a young person to have a great job. So we'll continue to work hard to advance those opportunities, to make the provincial level and the federal level of government aware of our needs. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is the effort that council has put into getting the GO train out to Clarington. So once that train is out there, the opportunity just to move people from community to community will also extend into moving people here for education and from out of our region to work, or people from other parts of the GTHA coming here to go to work. And we see that now. So it's an exciting time. And I'm like all of you, I'm on the edge of my seat for when COVID is over, and we can make sure that the things that are in place are happening in those jobs that are created now and are talked about continue to go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Regional Chair, and we look forward to all those changes and that's coming forward. Thanks again, and I just want to thank each and every one again that's on this on the line. The panelists, once again, you've done great. Thank you all. I will now we'll now move on to the next section, and so I'll pass over now to Jessica.
Hi, so just to let everyone know where they can find this video. So we did film it. It's a live stream. We recorded it. What year is this? So that will be available on the Congress's web or Facebook page, as well as their webinars. So it will be on the Facebook page for the Congress of Black Women of Canada for the Ajax Pickering chapter, as well as the Oshawa Whitby chapter. So we can provide those links in the chats, and we will also send out the link afterwards. Once that is up and available, we can send it to all of the attendees. So we just, as all of the libraries in Durham region, we have Ajax here, we have Pickering here, we have Whitby, we have Clarington. It is just a huge honor to be involved in this panel and to learn from all of you here today, and just be able to learn so much about your experiences and where we can go, and as allies, how we can support you. So thank you so much to our panel, to our partners, for allowing us to take part in this experience and be able to share the wealth of knowledge that you brought to us today. So on behalf of all the library systems, we are so incredibly grateful and thankful for this.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I think I'll now invite Magdalene to come back to the space. I keep saying podium, but to come back to the space. I hope
this discussion has been truly an eye-opener. One of my soft spots is that when someone said impact was the loss of innocence. And when I hear about the loss of innocence, I think of 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds having to be exposed to those images and what it does to their psyche. I am really encouraged to hear that Generation Chosen has as their goal to interrupt the harmful stories that invade young minds and strengthen financial literacy and entrepreneurship, networking opportunities, getting them politically involved, and providing them with the kind of confidence that they don't have to suffer those type of images or indignities. Youth are truly the youngest group among us, are truly one of my weaknesses, I would say. So it's always painful when I think about it, okay? I am very encouraged that you guys as young people, you rose to the occasion. There is no doubt that you guys are the future and there's nothing for us to be concerned about. Okay, on that note, I would like to say thanks everyone for being such an important part of this conversation. And thanks to the politicians and thanks to the library, Jessica, and the Pickering Library, the Ajax Library, the Clarendon Library, Whitby Library, and also all the libraries, and especially thanks to CEO Jackie Flowers. Without her support, I guess this event would not have been such a success. Okay, on that note, I would like to say goodbye to, I guess, the audience and maybe the panelists. Could you hold back just for a minute or two? Thank you very much, the panelists and the library.